Welcome to the Pages of Light podcast, your destination for discussions of popular fantasy and science fiction novels from a Christian worldview. My name is Tyler, aka Varum, and with me, as always, is Gabriel, aka the Quarantine Quartermaster. Welcome back to the podcast, Gabe. How are you doing on this fine late evening?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. Here we are. It's early February, and where am I right now? Things are starting to ramp up at school. Got some new responsibilities going on, and feeling good though. Excited to do another Brian McClellan book, and to finish out this trilogy with the Autumn Republic. So
yeah, it's gonna be good to finish this series off. I'm trying to think. Is this the first series we're finishing?
Ooh, that is a good question.
I actually don't remember because we've done other books that were parts of series, but I don't think we've finished an entire series because we did some Brandon Sanderson.
Well, we're not finishing Dune. We're not finishing the Ender saga.
We're not finishing Wheel of Time.
Well, we might, just not anytime soon.
Not for this podcast for sure.
Yeah.
So yes, this will be the first series that we're finishing.
Hey, look at that. We're making history.
Yay. Okay, we did it, everybody.
Podcast history right here. And how are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It's a late record session for us because we've been, after the holidays, we've been a little bit lax, and so it's just getting back in the swing of things with the podcast, so we need to get our mojo back. So we'll give us a few episodes, and then we'll be back at it with full strength.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. It takes me a while to learn new formats of doing things, and I think we're getting there. So it'll be good.
Sure. So if you haven't noticed, Gabe has this new setup he's got going on here, so that's why it's a little bit of a later start for us as we're recording, because we were messing around with making sure Gabe's setup was correct, because he's got a new camera setup, a new lens, a new microphone. He's got a bunch of new stuff. So
this is actually all old stuff, but Tyler did come over and help me set it all up, and it is a new recording setup for me. So I've had this equipment, and I've just been doing it off my Mac for ease of use, but I'm trying to get into recording my own YouTube videos again, and start editing, and just looking for a more permanent setup. So thanks for coming over and helping out.
No
I hope
problem.
to get these shelves mounted up here so that I can get a different arm attachment that will hold this camera, and I can kind of pull it down into place. I think that'll be good.
Right. Yes, and I'm actually also recording on a new camera. For Christmas I got an Elgato face cam, so I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it or if I'm going to go back to my Canon M50 with a little bit nicer lens. So I'm recording this episode, and I'm just going to see how I feel about it, but I might go back to the Canon M50. So we'll see. Let me know in the comments what you think of the video. So it's just a little bit more. It's a smaller setup with the Elgato face cam, and the M50 is a little bit more of a hodgepodge kind of thing with the fake battery and the power and the micro USB cable and all this kind of stuff. So, but we'll see what happens. But all of that aside, we are happy that you are here and you're listening to us. Make sure you check out Pages of Light on social media. We're on all of those different platforms. YouTube, subscribe on YouTube if you want to check out the video version. And you can also check out our website, pagesoflight.com. And as we mentioned before, we're going to be doing the Autumn Republic, book 3 of the Powder Mage Trilogy. And for this episode, we're going to be doing chapters 1 through 27. So that's about halfway through the book. If you have the paperback, that's about to page 280-ish. And so, that's going to be good. And, I don't know. I'm excited to jump into this so we can finish out this series. And we're just going to jump in with our favorite quotes. Gabe, do you want to start us off with the favorite quote?
Sure, yeah. So mine is a short quote. Tamas opened his mouth once, then closed it, trying to think of an argument against this that didn't end with, because I say so. He couldn't come up with one. So this is when Nyla is coming to the treaty with Ipoli, and she's being part of the Adran Republic Cabal.
Right.
And so I think it just speaks to Tamas understanding how things work. Because if you just rely on like I think about this with parenting. If I just rely on because I say so all the time, I think it makes like
right.
It kind of like undermines your authority, because you have to rely on like, well, because I'm in charge of you, you have to listen to me, and not like being well reasoned and like giving like good reasons for the choices that you're making, and so that that you bring people on board. And so Tamas is recognizing that like what he really wants is just to bar Nyla from coming to this, but he realizes that like it's only because him. So he makes a more humble decision and just says, I'm gonna roll with this because the only reason that I can really think of is because I just don't want her to come.
Right.
I think that speaks to a little. I can't place my finger on any scripture right now, but I feel like if I thought about Proverbs long enough, there would be some that came to me about this one. I do love some Proverbs.
Yeah.
So that was my quote. How about you? Which one did you choose?
Yeah, so I have, this is Bo talking to Nyla, and he says, always ask why. It's not enough to know the what of something. A privileged always needs to know the why. It helps you learn how things work, which aids in your manipulation of the else. And I just like this quote because I think that's just good in general, like life advice, like even not from a Christian perspective. Like it's good to challenge yourself and try to figure out like why things are happening the way that they are, and not just saying, oh, this thing happened, that's interesting, and then just moving on from there and not digging deeper into something that is maybe, like a news story or something philosophical that maybe conflicts with your own worldview. So figuring out and trying to dig deep and figure out why something is happening, or just why people believe things the way they believe them. If you're having conversations with people who aren't Christians, just like figuring out like, why do you believe what you believe? I think we've talked about this kind of concept in other podcasts where just asking questions like, what do you mean by that? Like somebody says, I think this, this, and this, and then say, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Like explain further about why that is the case for you and why you think those things are true about the world, or whatever topic that you're talking about. And I think that'll just give you like a deeper understanding of people's perspectives and a deeper understanding of the world in which we live in. And so that could be applied in non-Christian ways and Christian ways. So I thought that was just a good comment from Bo here as he's teaching Nyla about the ways of being a privileged. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that quote. And what comes to mind just off of the comments that you made is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah. And I believe habit number 6 is seek first to understand, then be understood. And that just kind of pops into my mind when you when you want to know why people think the way that they think. And that just leads to a deeper understanding of that person. And you can speak to them more personally because you understand where they're coming from if you take the time to understand them and ask them why they believe the things that they believe.
Right. Yeah, cool. So those are our favorite quotes. If you have a favorite quote from this section of the book, leave it down in the comments, as always. Love to see you guys have a discussion down there of what's going on. Now we're going to jump into some of our book discussion. So I think we'll kick off with just looking at some of our characters and where we left them off in book 2 and what's happening in book 3 at the beginning, just to kind of get our bearings. Because for us, it's been a while since we read book 2. So jumping back into the world, it's good to, get a refresher of where do we leave our fearless heroes here. So I think I'll just start off with Tamis, because he has the first 2 opening chapters here. So Tamis, as we all remember from book 2, was in this weird situation where he got trapped behind enemy lines, and he was, throughout all of book 2, he was trying to survive and make it back into the kingdom of Adro, so that he could rejoin the war effort and not be on the run from the Kez. And so he's managed to do this by the end of book 2, and he's managed to get back into Adro. And so for him, he's starting off and he's returning to the city of Adipest, the capital in the middle of Adro. And he comes in and he finds like all the churches have been destroyed, which we saw at the end of book 2, because Lord Claremont has arrived with all of his ships that he had sailed down through Ricard Tumbler's canal that he had been building as for trade and that kind of stuff. And so he's kind of taken over the city, and he's running for, is it the first prime minister? Is that the phrase that they're using here?
I believe so, but then again, I could be wrong.
But it's something like that. He's basically running for like leader of the state or whatever. So and so he's doing that, but he's doing it. Yeah, I guess he's not a fan of the church, and so he's been destroying all of the churches. And Tamis does not really like that, because he makes a comment in the beginning where he's like, "This church is like 300 years old, and it's like blasphemy almost to kind of do this to their state religion." And so he's kind of mad about that. But he can't really worry about that right now, because there's a war happening, and he needs to go down there and figure out what's going on with the war. And he's also trying to figure out what's happening with his own son, because as far as Tamis knows, the last time he saw Taniel was that he was in a coma in that Mala den, just with Ricard Tumbler kind of watching over him. And so he goes back to Ricard Tumbler and asks him like, hey, like what happened to Taniel? He woke up, obviously. So he just kind of gets all the details from Ricard of all the things that he knows that happened to Taniel. And so he decides that he needs to go back to the war front. Well, he needs to win the war, but I think he does have a greater purpose of getting his son back, because I think the experience that he had in book 2 made him realize like how he hasn't really been a very good father, and that he needs to do better with that. And as we'll see later in the book, that like they do try to really make amends with one another whenever they finally meet back up with each other later on in this book. So that's where we find Tamis. Do you have any comments about Tamis' story? Do you want to jump into Taniel and Capol?
Yeah. I like your observation that, Tamis is feeling like drawn that he needs to be part of the, be a better father to Taniel. And I think that is a lot, like we see that motivation come through in this book where it hasn't in other books. Taniel and Capol, they are on the run from the Kez. So Taniel discovers that Helenska troops are, the Adran troops are hunting him down. And there's several like little vignettes almost of Taniel like thwarting the people that are coming to like capture him and Capol. And then we have this kind of like scene when he is like returned victorious after he's like broken all these air rifles and left them like bent. He's like basically sending them a message. I could have killed every single one of you while you slept, and I did not. And now you don't have guns. Now you need to leave. So, but I mean, there's 2 companies, and I don't know how big a company is, but that's a lot of people versus one guy. And Capol is like kind of like camped out, and I
think they're in this like cave.
I thought I remembered a cave, and she's got this like big ritual going on in the cave, and Taniel's like, "What are you doing?" And she's just basically like, "I got Kresimir right here. and she's mute, so she doesn't
Right.
say that. She does all of her hand motions and everything. But she is such a powerful bone-eye sorceress that she is able to contain a god at distance, day in, day night, like all the time.
Right.
So Kapol is like crazy powerful.
Yeah.
And she's just like, I'm experimenting. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm
I was gonna say
trying my
that.
best over here. Yeah, anything that you want to add about this part?
Yeah, I mean, I just like those. I did like that scene where he's like talking to her, and she's like, "I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to like do my best to figure this all out." And he's like, "What? Why would you do that? That's not a good idea." It's like that scene later in the book whenever Nyla's trying to do her like finger magic thing, and all the people are just like slowly back away, so you don't get exploded by the the novice privileged over here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also like those scenes with Daniel trying to do his best to slow down the people, and I liked his inner monologue as he's going about and doing this. Like he goes into those camps like to kill everybody, but he's like, these are like Andran soldiers. Like he maybe fought with some of these people. These are his countrymen. So like he goes there with the intention of killing them all, because he's like, if I kill them, then they can't come after me anymore. But he's like struggling with the idea of killing his own countrymen. And so I like kind of that inner monologue. And there's even like, I think he's just showing, because in previous books, like he's mentioned things like, all I'm good for is killing. And like, that's been like the thing that he's all been about. And that's like all he's good at. And so I think he's like, do I really have to kill them? Like, I guess I don't have to. It might make it harder for him, but yeah. So I just kind of like that inner monologue that he's having with himself about the challenge to kill or not to kill people in general and his own countrymen. So Gabe's got the microphone up. He's going to say something important here.
So, just sidebar note, you'll probably need to go back because my cat was like right up on the microphone and like much closer than I was. That's why I moved the microphone. So feel free to like cut this part out, but we left with, I had something really important to say, and I do have a good response for that.
Okay. Yeah. Continue.
So
it's okay. We like cats in the podcast. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So my thought was like, that's the way that Christians need to like approach life. The Daniel's thought line, like, these are my people. Like, if I hurt them, that is affecting like other people's lives. And, as Christians, like, you will encounter people that are, we are all on the same team. We are all trying to get to heaven. Like, that is the goal. And there are people who are walking towards the light, and the majority of people are walking away. And we are in a house that's on fire, and we're just trying to grab people and like get them to come with us. And that's like that's how you need to look at people. Even when people are mean or bitter, and like, you can treat them like kindly and with respect. And over time, that does build up credibility, because I've had some people in my life that have just been so like anal retentive and just like hard to work with, but like the diligence of my spirit is just to like work with them and be like, okay, I'm going to give you all the respect that you deserve. I'm going to give you no reason to like, like not want me to be part of the team. And just like, it has paid off in the long run. So like, yeah, that description, like, I like that you brought up that description there, because it just sparked that, from the Christian worldview, like, we're all on the same team, and we need to have compassion for others, even when they are prickly and not the easiest to get along with.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of like major themes, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit later in the podcast, that is somewhat of a theme in this book, at least in the first half, of like the struggle between like are you killing and you're doing bad things, but you're doing them for the right reasons? And where is the line in terms of your morality? Because like Nyla is also dealing with this because she's a privileged, and she has all this power, and she has the ability to, create mass havoc and mass death around her, and she's scared of that power, and so she doesn't know, should she wield that power for good by killing the quote unquote bad people to save the people that she loves. So is that a moral thing to do, is to kill other people to save the people that you love and like? So it's just an interesting dynamic. And I think Taniel's kind of dealing with a similar scenario where like it'd be easier for him if he would just kill them, because that way he wouldn't have to worry about them coming after him again. But they're his own countrymen, and he doesn't really want to kill them, but he might have to do it out of necessity. So yeah, it's quite a conundrum that they both face in this book. But yes, so you had some good points there from the Christian worldview perspective for sure. Yeah, did you have anything else on Taniel and Capol, at least at the beginning of the story? Otherwise, we'll jump to yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that Capol is basically saying to Taniel that she can't move Kresimir. So,
oh right, yeah,
like he's gonna buy them a little bit more time to try and figure that out.
Yes. Yeah, Taniel. I feel like Taniel gets annoyed a lot of times because she can't talk, and she's just like, I have to do this, and that means like Taniel just has to like figure it out on his own, because Capol is not going to come with him, because she's not going to leave her super powerful magic doll things just laying around in the cave for anyone to come up and find. So, and
I feel like if she leaves, like Kresimir is going to be another like back on the back on the chessboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's where we have Taniel and Capol at the beginning of the story, and then we are going to move now to Adamant, Bo, and Nyla, and they're kind of a trio at the beginning here. So they're all together because Adamant struck a deal with Bo, where Bo wants to go and try and help save Taniel and get his name cleared from the charges that were brought against him by General Hilanska. And so Adamant's going to go help Bo figure out this stuff with Taniel, and then I can't remember, don't know what the word what the word I want is, but and in return, Bo is going to help Adamant find his son, who was taken by Lord Vetus's men and sold into the slave trade, essentially, from what I understand. I don't remember the location that he was sent to, but he's basically off, and he's at the slave trade. So Adamant wants to get him back, and he thinks that Bo is one of the only people that can help him, because he's super powerful and he can handle a lot of people at one time and get into places that normal people wouldn't be able to get into. So this is the deal that they have. And so at the beginning we find they're going to the war front because they're going to try and investigate things that are happening with Taniel. And so they're doing a bunch of investigation. They're trying to figure out what he was doing before he was captured. And Nyla gets a bunch of she goes to who does she go to, Gabe? She goes to, I don't know if this is what they use, but it was essentially like a quartermaster, like someone who kept all the records and the notes and stuff of what was happening.
Yeah.
So she goes
to the quartermaster.
She goes to the quartermaster, and so she gets all of the details of what Taniel had requisitioned for the war effort, and they find something interesting where they find this one report that is dated for after he was captured, and so that is a red flag to them that somebody had forged that particular requisition. And the requisition was for, I think it was for like a ton of
air rifles.
Yeah, air rifles, because only powder mages can requisition air rifles. Is that what it was? It was something like that. Like
Tamis puts it. Yeah, Tamis put him on lockdown. He said like only like the powder mages can get these out of storage because we need these. And then that's when Bo puts 2 and 2 together and says Hilanska has outfitted these 2 companies to go hunt Taniel. Yes. And then that's when he and Nyla part ways. I believe they're in the coach with
Etan.
Lady Wenceslav.
Yeah, Wenceslav and well, they're with
Adam.
General Etan as they're traveling away from the camp. I don't know. Maybe I have the timelines a little bit off there.
Yeah, because they escape with Etan,
right,
from Helanska's camp,
right,
and then they make their way over to Wings of Adam.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit there, but
that's okay.
So they're investigating, and Helanska doesn't really want them sniffing around his business, and so he captures Adamant and all of the other soldiers that were accompanying him, which are basically, there was a group of soldiers that Tamis gave to Adamant to help him track down his family and help to defeat Lord Vetus, which we saw in book 2. And so these same soldiers are with him now, led by Aldrich, I think is his name. I'm not sure what his rank is, but Aldrich is his last name. And so they all get captured. And so Bo and Nyla, they come and rescue them. And they escape with a sympathetic, I think it's Colonel, sympathetic Colonel, Etan, who is also, he's the one who was friendly with Taniel and told him that he was a coward if he didn't try to come back and win the war. We talked about that in our book 2 conversation. If you want to go back and check it out, I'll put a link to it down in the description, along with book 1 as well, Promise of Blood. So you can check all of those out if you're just jumping in at the beginning of this book. So they escape with Etan, and this is where they kind of get separated. So Adamant goes along with Etan, and he goes off to the Wings of Adam camp. And then Bo and Nyla, they're kind of off doing their own thing, and they capture this messenger who is sent from General Helanska. And this messenger was supposed to go to the Kez, and he was supposed to be delivering a message to them because Helanska and the Kez are in cahoots. And Helanska is going to try and basically the army is divided. There's a civil war here, and so there's Helanska. He's part of the Andron army, who is broken off of the main army, and then there's General Ket, who is part of the Andron army, and she's on the other side of the civil war. And so Helanska is going to try to join with the Kez and try to defeat the rest of the Andron army. And so I'm not sure exactly what his full plan was, because I don't remember if we really get it all spelled out of what his general plan was with the Kez. Were they just gonna let him live or something? Or I don't know if you remember any specifics about that.
Yeah,
not.
I don't think that they go into the specifics, but so we have 4 military companies that we're kind of following. So right. we have Ket and Helanska, and they are both accusing each other of being traitors to
right.
Adro. And then we have the Wings of Adam, the mercenary group, who is trying to just save Adro, and they're kind of not in a civil war state. Right. And then we have, of course, the Kez, who are trying to invade the country. And so, it's the whole Civil War thing threw me for a loop, because it's hard to keep track of what's going on. But at the end of that, they just say after the coup happens and they take out Ket's army, it was kind of unclear what would happen to the Adran army, because you have a bunch of faithful, servants of formerly the crown and now, servants of Adro, and right. They're going to see that they're joining the Kez, and right. either they're going to be okay, which, these are some of the toughest warriors in the 9, toughest soldiers. I don't see them being we'll just join with our enemy of so many years. So I feel right. Ippoli's we have enough people, we'll just occupy your country and we'll just kill off all your countrymen. I feel that's kind of how it would have played out, right. because everyone there has their own independent will.
Yes. So that's basically what's happening. And so we have Adamant. He goes off to the Wings of Adam because he in order to prevent kind of this civil war from escalating, he's going to suggest to General Abrax of the Wings and also Lady Wenceslav, who is the leader of the Wings. So he wants them to. So basically, he knows that Ket is also a traitor in her own way, like she's done some bad things. And so what he wants them to do is to relieve Ket of command and to adopt all of the Andran soldiers into the Wings of Adam. And so now all the soldiers are going to be in the Wings, and none of them are going to be on Andran soldiers. And so there's going to be nobody for, like, that will kind of, in his mind, like, stop the civil war, because there's no Andran army for him to fight because they're all in the Wings of Adam. And this is kind of his suggestion. And then I think it's like the next day, Bo and Nyla also arrive at the Wings camp, and they have information about Helanska that they got from that messenger that they captured. And so now they know what the grand plan is going to be, that the Kez are actually going to be attacking in the very near future, and that they all have to get ready. And so kind of towards the end of this section, we have Ket get relieved of her command. All of the troops from Ket's command are adopted into the Wings, and so basically all of these soldiers are now in the Wings, and so the only Andran soldiers left are the ones that Tamis is bringing with him from Adapest and the Deliv soldiers. So go ahead.
So just another Christian thought about like authority. So in this, we just had this discussion on like, what would the Adran soldiers do if they were told to like go join with Kez? And when it comes to the authority of God, if you're a Christian, like his authority should be absolute. And we look to the Bible for what God wants us to do with our lives. And so like, even if it goes against the culture, even if it goes against what everyone expects of, like, quote unquote, is expecting of you, like right. You are to follow God, because that, like, God is good. And like, even though it doesn't make people feel good when you follow God, like, we are called to follow God. And then on the reverse side of that is like submitting to human authority. Like, there is like government, and like, we have positions like in society. And I think that God wants us to acknowledge that, like, yes, there are structures here that keep us safe. But at the same time, there's also things that, like, when we are getting into the realm of like violating God's laws so much that it's just not, that you can't stand for it anymore, then there is a time to stand up right. And then refute, the human authorities over you. And that could be like a government authority, or like someone at work, or just like in a social group.
Right.
Yeah. And then like, I'm not telling you to go out and just,
revolt,
revolt against everyone. I'm not
right.
saying that. But I'm just saying like that, we should always be looking to the Bible for how to act. And we always need to handle every other person with grace and care. And then if you're really not sure, like, what you should be doing in a situation, like, find a godly person, find a mentor at your church, seek right. them out and say, this is my situation, help me discern what God wants me to do, right. here.
Yeah. There's that proverb. I don't remember the first half of it, but it's like, there, in a multitude of counselors, there is wisdom, or something like that. I know Dave Ramsey always will use that proverb.
I love that proverb too, because, I tell my wife, like, we will always seek wise counsel. Like when we're doing something for the first time, mm-hmm. or we are trying to do something bigger than we've done before. I'm like,
mm-hmm.
we are always going to seek wise counsel. We are always going to try and get multiple perspectives. And then we're always going to try and do like what's best and what God is kind of directing us to do.
Right.
Because a lot of people just will seek their own opinion, and right. Who can't tell you your blind spots?
Yeah, there's like confirmation bias. Like you want to have your own opinion validated, so you just look for things that validate your own opinion and not something that will challenge it.
Correct. Yeah, and I like to use like the three, like in good research you should find 3 independent sources, and like the things that are common between those 3 credible, good academic sources, like those are the things you should trust. Because you can always find an article that has like an outlier perspective, and then like it's safer to just have like 3 different trustworthy sources telling you the same thing.
Right.
Because a lot of people like to read one article and claim it as, claim it as gospel truth.
This is the truth.
Yeah.
Although now
don't do that, people.
Or although now it's more like, this is my truth. There's a lot of rejection of the truth. That's more of, this is true for me, and it's kind of much more subjective. But we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But I like what you said about the authority, because there's definitely a line of like, you're supposed to respect the authorities that are put in place because God has put them in place, and he's put them in authority over, whatever area that they're in authority of. But that's like up to a point of where the people in authority are supposed to be, like, at least if it's like governmental authority, like they should be trying to do the will of God. But if they're doing things that are anti-biblical and they're asking you to do things that are anti-biblical, that's the time to say, hey, like, you're saying I should do this, but the Bible tells me I need to do this, and it's completely opposite. Like in that scenario, you can't just leave the biblical truth and just do the thing that the person in authority says, because you have an authority that's higher than that person. God's an authority over that person. Even though God maybe put them in their position, they have authority over certain things that God gave them, but there's something that's higher over them that we have, that's our true authority. So just important to keep that in mind as well as you're just living life in general. So
that's a good word.
Indeed. Yeah, I don't think we had anything else with that section.
You want me to jump into the battle with the Kez?
Oh yeah, go for it. This is a good section here.
Yeah, so Tamas also arrives on scene.
He does. He gets everything in order.
Yep, and he's like, we just need more time, and they hatch this plan to get a code breaker from the Wings of Adam, and they send a coded message from basically,
it's like a fake
by the way
message.
Yeah, well, it's from Tamas,
right?
And they looked at Helanska's like communique and were like, we should use this like language and diction like when speaking and communicating with the Kez. But yeah, so him and Helanska are like having this like meeting. He's like, Helanska, come with me, and then like Helanska just stabs him and runs. Like,
I know, what a crazy scene.
Oh my gosh. And then like Tamas is like bleeding all over the place, and he's like, like this happened to me in the Girlish War, and I got all infected in there, and terrible. And he was like, he was a groomsman at my wedding. Like, how could you, like, someone at your wedding that you like trusted like goes and betrays you in this huge way? People just look out for themselves.
Yep. I think this is a scenario where like he's in like way too deep. Like he can't, there's no escape from the position that he finds himself in. So he basically has to just like, it's either he just gives up and he gets court-martialed and he's probably going to get executed, or he has to run away. So I think it's basically the decision he has for himself there. So unfortunate, but yeah. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. Okay. So Tamas is looking at the Kez army, which like is like 250,000 people, and just like,
right.
He's happy about the Dela bringing 60,000 people. Like, I don't think Tamas is fielding that many people. And so during this time, Tamas is like coming up with a plan, and help me unpack this. So Helanska's troops are now Tamas's troops, and
right.
they are planning to attack the Ket army, which is now run by Abrax
and the Wings, yes.
and the Wings, and then they figure out that they are now on the same side, and then they are going to attack the Kez.
But
is that right?
But that information is not disseminated down to the lower ranks. Like Abrax knows what's happening, and because there's that scene, remember, where like Abrax tells one of the like the lower commanders of the Wings, like, "Hey, hold your fire," because the Halanska's armies are coming, and he's like, "Hold my fire! Why would I do that? They're gonna come kill us." But there's some higher level play happening where it's like a fake, like they're gonna pretend that they're on the same side, and then they're gonna turn, and then they're gonna have a unified front after that. So there was some. It was one of those things again where, like in book 2, like the command level knows what's happening. Like Tamis is making a decision, but the lower people don't really know what's happening, and so there's that balance between, shouldn't you be telling your lower troops like what's happening? But this might have been a scenario where there just wasn't really like time to like tell everybody what was happening. They just had to like make these decisions really quick, and the only people that could know about them were the upper level command, because they could make the quick decisions to make everything happen. So yeah, it was kind of a crazy scenario of events happening, because we kind of got this from Nyla's perspective, where she was like, "We're gonna die because the people are coming," and then she's like, "They're turning away, we're not gonna die." But then all of the Kez armies come as well, so maybe she was gonna die anyways. But that didn't happen, as we'll get to.
Yeah, and that, I mean, like I've worked in like school / business where there's definitely like a need to know basis, and like things will only roll out once like the upper crust has like figured things out, and like I was a fly on the wall in some of those conversations, and like I knew things, and like it's just like it is a different mindset to be like, this information is like quarantined and no one is allowed to know this information. And like I still have to do that, like even in like my current position, like I find out things before other people, and it's a good practice in like keeping your mouth shut. Some people loose lips sink ships. Just I was at a event this one time, and they're like, you can't tell that person anything. Like as soon as they hear it, like it's all coming out. Yep. And you just beware of the people who like gossip. I think that's also in the Proverbs too. Right.
Small, short little sidebar / side quest thing. I like the sitcom New Girl. If you've ever seen it, there's a character. His name's Nick.
I've seen a few episodes.
Yeah, there's a character. His name's Nick, and there's a few episodes where like people tell him secrets, and he's like notoriously bad at keeping secrets, and like his back gets like all sweaty and stuff. And so like in later seasons, like if people think he has a secret, they just like flip him around. He's like, "Oh, you have sweaty back. You have a secret." That just reminded me of that.
That's funny. He's got to tell.
Yeah. Shout out to New Girl. Great sitcom if you're looking for something funny to watch.
So we're at like Nyla's viewpoint. So she sees like all of the Kez like getting ready to attack, and she is just like, she is left alone. Like Bo has left to go rescue Taniel because he figured it out, with the code breakers, that Taniel was going to be attacked by 2 companies of people with air rifles. So she's like at the front, and Abrax is like, "I need your help." And she's like, I don't know anything. She's like, "I'm basically just a laundress." And Abrax is a little disgusted with her. I believe it's Abrax. It's definitely like an authority like at the camp. Right. And then so she's like behind the lines, and she's like trying to get herself psyched up. She's like all trying to like work it out. And then something happens, and her hand just like catches on fire. And then I know that you like the part, Tyler, where Bo is explaining to Nyla how her powers are working. And so you have the two hands, right, for the privilege, and then they each have like the different elements. And Nyla is strongest in fire, and she uses, I think, the ether to kind of like spark the fire and spread the fire. So she's like tapping her fingers and like trying to coordinate like an attack, and she like, does she have a successful like fire before she like runs out to the front? I think she does.
Yeah, she gets her whole hand on fire, and that's how she knows she like kind of gets it. But she's like, oh, I finally got it. And then she like runs out into the front, and then she's like, no, I actually don't have it, because she was like failing to do it. But then it was one of those things where at the very last moment she gets it. It's kind of like that heroic triumph kind of moment. But for her, it's the aftermath is not really a triumph for her. So she's kind of horrified by what she does. But yes, they have like each finger, as Bo explained, is like for a different element. So depending on what you're most powerful in, I guess there was 5. I can't remember all of the 5 now, but there's like fire, earth, aether, and wind. Air is, yeah, I guess those are the 5 maybe. I'm missing. That was only 4, but math isn't our strong suit. We'll just do book discussions here. We won't talk about math. But yeah, again, kind of a short little sidebar. I did like in this book where we got to explore more of the magic system, because we did have Bo essentially just teaching Nyla what it means to be privileged, like where your power comes from, how do you control your powers, and just learning about like what it means to like have the life of a privileged. And that's where like my quote comes from at the beginning, where he's talking to her about like just ways to be like a better privilege, like looking for the why. And there's also a quote that I almost picked this one, but I didn't. It was something about like, you're like a privileged are just bad people. That's just who they are. And so she was like, but I'm supposed to be a privileged. And then Bo was like, well, you already are privileged. And so you're just going to have to deal with that kind of, that situation and that kind of mentality with how like a privilege is perceived. But then towards the end of the story, he's like, you need to be a better type of privilege, one that has like ethics and morals and those kind of things. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, I did like that part of this book, because I kind of wish that we had more of that magic system exploration in the other books. I think that would have made it a lot more interesting, at least knowing kind of like how the magic was working as we were seeing it, because in books 1 and 2, it was a lot of magic is happening and Bo is doing this weird sorcery thing and we have no idea really what he's really doing. It just looks really cool and it has lots of explosions and whatever. So, I mean, that was kind of cool, but we didn't really get any of the underlying like workings of the magic system and how that was all happening from like the foundational perspective of what was happening. So, that's how my mind works. I like to explore the magic systems as a Brandon Sanderson fan. He goes really deep into how the magic systems work. And so, yes, sorry. Side quest, sidebar completed there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know you were looking for the magic, how it worked and stuff. So I'm glad you got it in book 3. It came through.
Finally, we got it.
So yeah, we left off at like the best part is like when Nyla goes out and goes like Super Saiyan on all these like cavalry that's coming in. She does the magic and then there's like this pause and then like I think like just fire like erupts from like inside of her and then just like flows out in waves across the battlefield, just like charring everything to a cinder, and like all the oncoming Kez just meet a wall of fire, and then there's like all these screams, but then like the fire is so hot that they just like immediately die. And Nyla has wiped out like, do you remember the number? It was like
3,500 is what they said.
3,500 people. in like seconds.
Yeah, just like that.
So, yeah.
And she kept on asking, like, how many did I kill? How many did I kill? Please tell me. And Adamant's like, you don't want to go over that ridge. Let's just not go over there. You're gonna not like that experience if you go over there.
And I'm gonna bring in a psychology term. So this will be my little side quest called cognitive dissonance. So I'm gonna read you a definition and an example. The state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. An example would be, some examples of cognitive dissonance include smoking. Many people smoke even though they know it is harmful to their health. The magnitude of the dissonance will be higher in the people who highly value their health. So that was just an example I pulled up off the internet. So yeah, Nyla thinks that she's a good person, and then she knows that she killed like 3,500 people, and
right,
that's a lot of people.
Yes,
she was worried about the one that she killed with her fire hands earlier in the book, and now she's killed thousands of people. But hey, good news is she turned the tide. And then Tyler and I were having this discussion before the podcast, like, is it okay to kill? And I generally feel like the answer is probably yes, if it's related to war, which is different from like murder, which is just like one human going after another human. I feel like when it is like a nation versus another nation, like going to war and killing is acceptable in God's eyes. And the only reason I think that is because I think C.S. Lewis was a vet, and he kind of condoned it in one of his books. And I don't remember his whole theology, so I'm not going to go into that, but I think it's okay. That's something that I will probably look up on a Mike Winger YouTube channel and to see if he has anything to say about it. Right. Or if I can find more from C.S. Lewis on why it was okay. But
right.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of like. There are many things in your faith that you just kind of like feel like are true, but then like you have to go back and justify them, and you realize, there's a gap in my knowledge, and I need to like figure out, do I really believe this? Is this what the Bible is teaching? So it's a good practice. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of. I was just gonna look at this little section that she had, because I found the section where she's having this conversation with herself. She says, this is on page 142, if you want to follow along. She says, "You're going to try and kill people? These are human lives you'll be ending. You're not a warrior. You're a laundress. They'll die in an inferno, burned alive, and the screams will haunt you the rest of your life. But," she argued, "if I do nothing, then the wing's mercenaries will die. The infantry will be overwhelmed, and all their non-combatants will be put to the sword. That's what they're paid to do." So there's her dilemma. She can either kill, or she can let people be killed. So which one is worse, to let people die or to take the action to do the killing first? So,
and what does God want you to do?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's hard. We're not saying it's an easy or like easy ethical choice to make. But like if you make it kind of personal, like if you're in a scenario where like your family is threatened, and you have the choice to either kill the person threatening your family or let the person kill your family, like, putting yourself in that situation, you're gonna
defend your family,
right? Yeah. You're gonna defend your family, and it's not that you wanted to do it, but you were put into a scenario where it was either him or them, and so. Yeah, I don't know. I know there's Christians that would be on both sides of this issue. And
for sure.
So some people would say, like, it's not yours. Like, if God wanted your family to die in that situation, that is his will. And you taking an action against what was going to happen is like going against the will of God. And so there's multiple layers for kind of this question.
That's why I'm interested in future defense weapons. Like, I'm really interested in like like, because of that situation, like if I am in a situation where I want to defend my family,
right? But I don't want to kill. But I don't want to kill people.
But I don't want to kill people. Yeah, I think the future holds some cool answers. Like, I think it'd be cool to have a sonic weapon where I can like knock people over from far away,
right?
Or just a straight up taser. Like give them a taser,
right?
I've seen the taser stuff. It's for real. No, it doesn't seem like being tased is a pleasurable experience. Wow. And then you have it connected to them. You can be like, don't move. And if they start moving, like, it's not like shooting them. You just be like, well, I'm going to give you the juice. If you move, right, I'm going to give you the juice. You're just going to sit there until the police come.
Right. Yes. But yeah, that's a difficult.
So I'm interested in the.
Yeah. That's a difficult moral question to ponder. So if you want to talk about the ethics and morality of war and death, have a discussion in the comments. Keep it civil.
Give us your insights.
Yes, give us your insights. Try to keep it civil though in the comments if you can. All right, so we're going to continue on our journey here. We are almost to the end. So after the battle here, we have there's while this kind of battle is happening, Bo has left and he's on a mission to rescue Taniel because he figures out where he is in the general proximity, because he figured out with those air rifles, the companies were going after him. And so he makes a beeline to try to get Taniel, and he's able to get there in time. We have some scenes where Taniel's kind of he's running through the woods, and he's being very sneaky and dividing up the army in specific ways so that he can kind of get them in one-on-one fights. And he's a veteran kind of warrior, and so he's able to do this with some pretty good efficiency. And he's also, what do you say? He's the pretty version of a powder mage that we found out in book 2. So he's kind of supercharged, and he doesn't necessarily need powder to do a lot of damage. So there's also an actually interesting scene where he doesn't have any powder anymore up there. He's all out. And so there's a point in the story where he's like, I actually don't miss the powder, and he doesn't feel like he needs it anymore. But I think he goes and uses it later on in this half of the book. So I just thought that was interesting. Maybe he's finding that he doesn't necessarily need it as much. Maybe that addiction might be coming to a close. So interested to see what happens with that later on in the story. But so Bo is able to finally catch up with him, and he's able to save him from the soldiers that are coming after him. There's one guy that's completely splattered across this rock face, and Tanya was like, "Why'd you have to do that?" And he's like, "I should look up this quote." Do you want to continue for a second while I looked up this quote, because I just thought it was an amazing quote from Bo.
Yeah, sure. So at this point, when Bo and Taniel are reunited, basically Taniel is now going to be safe, and
right.
Bo has coerced it. Did you find it?
Yeah, I found it already.
Wow, that was fast. Go ahead.
I just happened to open to the page. I just got lucky.
Wow.
But he says Taniel is he was splattered like a grape, and he was like, I was wondering why they were all so cooperative. A little messy, don't you think? This is Taniel. And then Bo says, I found that a little messiness is like manure on a field when you're trying to cultivate fear. Oh. That's some Bo quote for you.
Yeah.
I just thought
that was dark.
I thought that was a good quote. Yeah, it is a little dark. I mean, Bo is a little bit of a dark character. He's done some not so good stuff.
He's a little dark. He has this he cares very much about the people that he cares about.
Yes.
And he will F you up if you cross him.
Right. If you threaten those people.
Yep. I mean, he tore Vetus's arms off, just boom.
Like a spider.
He's not messing around.
Yeah.
Don't want to make Bo mad at you. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
do you want to keep going?
Yeah. Okay. I can keep going. Yeah. Bo. So Bo, he rescues Taniel, and he's gonna go help and take him back. But Tamis actually arrives shortly, and so Tamis did this thing where he left the war front because he was trying to get after his son, which is why I mentioned earlier that his real mission was to get Taniel back, not necessarily to like get back to the war, but he really wanted to save his son and make amends with that relationship. And so he goes off from the war, and he goes after Taniel, and so he goes and finds him with Bo, and they all come back to the war front. And at this point, he gets back, and they find out that they won the battle with all of Tamis's. Tamis had left a bunch of orders and commands for the army while he was gone, and this just shows you like the tactical genius of Tamis, because he basically he runs the whole war or the whole battle in his head of what all the different scenarios could happen would be, and he gives all these orders to Valora, and he's like, okay, here's all the things that can happen, here's what you should do if X happens, here's what you should do if this happens, and all of these things. And so Valora is the one that is enacting this vision of Tamis, but Tamis himself isn't actually there. And so this makes people, when they later find out what happened, this makes people like Abrax and the Wings of Adam very unhappy, because Tamis basically used the wings as like a punching bag, and he used them as a buffer against the Kez army so that he would lose less Andran soldiers, and they would lose more Wings of Adam mercenary soldiers. And so this obviously makes them upset. And so they decide that they're going to like kind of stay for the peace talks with the King of Kez, as we'll talk about in a second, but that they're going to be withdrawing from the war. So that'll be something that we find out what happens with in the second half of the book, which will be certainly interesting. But so they have this peace talks that are going to be going on, because King Eppley sends a messenger and he says he wants to talk peace because they just got defeated. And so they go and they have these peace talks, and they go on for like basically a whole day, right? And they don't come back until like very late in the night. And whenever they get back, they find out that there was a surprise attack on their camp that from the Kez. And so while they were talking peace, Ipoli had sent a strike force to go in and capture Kapol, who they have, I guess for somehow, we're not sure how they know, but they know that Kapol, her sorcery is keeping Kresimir incapacitated. And they obviously do not want this to happen, because they want Kresimir as their super powerful trump card god figure that will help them win the war. And so in order to remedy this, they go and do this little stealth mission. They send in, I think they said it was like 5,000 soldiers or something like that, and like 5 privileged or something. But a decent sized force, but 5 privileged is a lot of privileged. And there's not going to be any privileged in their camp, and so they're severely outnumbered except for Bo. But 5 against 1 is pretty bad odds, even though Bo is pretty powerful. So it does not end well, and Kapol gets captured, and Bo is also gravely wounded. And there's this interesting kind of setup with what they did to Bo, because they have multiple privileged. They can kind of use their powers in tandem based on what they're more gifted at. So like Nyla's gifted in fire, and so what they did was they took these like metal spikes or rods, and they had one privilege like heat them all up so they're really hot, and then they had one with the earth like dig holes, and then they had one flinging the rods with their air. And so that's kind of an interesting kind of trio of all of the magical systems working together, or different aspects of the magic system working together to incapacitate Bo, because they like trapped him in this like prison of rods, and because they're so hot, they're like essentially cooking him. It's like a little oven that they put him in, and it was a really unique way to kind of think about the magic system and what you could do with it. So I don't know, do you have any thoughts about this kind of section here and this ending with Bo getting put in this little prison?
No, I think you covered it. Like it's just very like unexpected. Like Bo is like being heated to death after this surprise privilege attack on the Adran soldiers, and they got Kapol. So that means does that mean that Kresimir is back back in play? Is he able to move around, or is she still able to control him? We don't know at this point.
Right.
And Tamas is worried. He's like saying, Kresimir might be back in play, so we have to prepare for that.
Right.
As he's talking to Taniel about it.
Well, unfortunately, Kapol is not a viewpoint character because she doesn't. I guess she would have an inner monologue, but she can't. She's a mute, so she can't talk. So we're not going to get any insight into what happened to her directly, unless there's unless he adds something that hasn't been happened in the rest of the series. She hasn't been a viewpoint character, so we'll just have to kind of see secondhand what happened to her later on. But I think she'll definitely give them a fight for sure, and I think they're gonna have to figure out how to disassemble her enchantments. So maybe Kapol will kill Kresimir. Bold prediction. Here we go. Gabe knows the ending, so
I remember two things. I said, I have a bad memory. I was having trouble remembering all the things that happened. I mean, there's just a lot that happens. I felt like this.
Right.
There was lots of intricacy to this book. I just felt like with the Halanska, the double cross, then like I said, keeping those 4 army divisions in my head, we're attacking the same person, but it's only a feint, and we know that we're actually all going to attack the Kez. There was just a lot of minutia going on in there.
Right. Yeah, let's see. So Taniel pursues Kapol. So he knows that she got captured, and because he loves her, which he told Tamas after their reunion, and so Tamas obviously says, yeah, go back and get her. Well, 1, they need her because she's holding Kresimir back, and 2, because Taniel loves her. Those are 2 good reasons for them to go after her. And so he goes off on his own at the start, and then Tamas also sends a little retinue of soldiers along right behind him, which contains Valora, Gavril, and some of Olam's rifle jacks. So there's some skilled soldiers there. Are the rifle jacks, are they special because they have a knack? They have knacks?
I think they were just the most senior,
they're just the most highly trained.
Yeah, and I feel I thought Tamas was combining the 7th and the 9th brigades into one, the new 7th, and they were the rifle jacks. And if you think about those veterans who were at Budville, and then they were trapped behind the Kez lines, and they marched across the country with the threat of death, on their doorstep, and then they captured what was Ippoli's son's name? He's trying to see Tamas right before the
He is, yeah. I'm very interested to see what he has to say, actually. I can't wait for that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think those are the rifle jacks, and that's a very skilled crew going after Kapol. You have 2 very powerful powder mages. You have Gavril, who is just big, strong Gavril and commander, and then the rifle jacks. So
yes.
And then I think then we have another chapter from Tamas's perspective, and this is where he is rallying the troops. He's we have to, we've taken care.
They betrayed us during peace talks and all this kind of stuff.
Yep, he's getting them riled up to go after the Kez, after this blatant, he called the white flag was sacrosanct, and Ipoli just decided to act even under the white flag of truce. And so he's got all of his generals shouting, and even the king of Delev comes, Sulam, and he arrives, and he gives his sword to Tamas to show that he will follow him into battle. And fight against the Kez. So this is what he's been waiting for. He's been waiting for the 60,000, the reinforcements. And, with Tamis on one side of the battle, it's probably going to be lopsided tactically. The Kez just have numbers. Like when, Ipoli mentions that Nyla, the untrained apprentice, according to his spies, say that she's just an untrained apprentice. The response is that I just have more men I will always throw at you, so don't even worry about it. Right. So, yeah, he is not a very humble man at all.
And he's willing to just like toss his men aside just for the victory. He's like, just throw more men, don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, one thing about that scene is I liked where they're all kind of like sitting in there. He gathered all his officers, and then he just like makes them wait. And they're just like, what are we waiting for? He's like, I'm waiting for someone to arrive. And he was waiting for the king of Deliv to come, because he wanted him to be a part of the rallying cry, to see him also with the support of the 60,000 to kind of give them that final oomph of like, we have the 60,000 Deliv troops. Let's go. We have the numbers we need to make this happen. So
yeah, Tamis thinks those things out. He's a good leader.
He is.
Good job, Brian McClellan. Okay, so you want to take Adamant coming back to Adapest?
Yeah, sure. So Adamant's kind of been in the mix of all this kind of stuff. He's just kind of been in the background for some of the big battle things. And eventually he returns to Adapest because he doesn't really he wants to be done with all of this kind of war stuff, and he's done with trying to help Tamis with all his war things. And we didn't talk about this, but I'll mention it now. During the battle, there was a warden that came and attacked the lines, and the warden was going after Adamant, and he looks this warden like right in the face, and he realizes that the warden is his son, Joseph. We don't have like confirmation about this, that this is officially true, but this is what he feels is true to him. And he sees the face and his eyes, and he knows that it's his son. And so this is for him. He's like, well, now my mission to have Bo help me go get him back is pointless. And so he's just going to go home, and he has to tell his wife that their son is dead. And because he doesn't want to tell Faye that Joseph is a warden, which, I mean, that's like in Adamant's mind, that's a fate worse than death, because he wants to like amend the deal with Bo. He's like, I want you to help me kill my son instead. So we'll see what happens with that, because Bo is not really going to be able to do that because of how he's a bit incapacitated, because they put that rod through his like kneecap. It was pretty graphic how they were describing that. And then Nyla like just like flung this rod out. Yep. So yeah, it was not.
She got her fire hands going.
Not a pretty picture. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so he goes back home, and he's gonna go help Ricard Tumbler with his election. Tamis initially asked him to help him go take down Lord Claremont, but he's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm already I've done too many things. I need to be done with all this stuff. But I think in true Adamant fashion, because he's a patriot, I think he's going to do it anyways. He's going to come to the conclusion that he needs to do it, even though he doesn't really want to, or he thinks it's maybe not a good decision, I'll say. But I think he'll just kind of get dragged back in, because that's kind of who Adamant is. And he wants to help his country. And he when he's talking to Faye, like, Faye doesn't understand why he feels the need to like go off and do these things. And why can't he just like come home and be with the family and just like live a normal life? And Adamant's like, doesn't she understand? Like, I have obligations to the country. Like, there's more important things. Like, he's almost in a way like saying, like, my allegiance to my country is more important than the allegiance to my family. That's kind of the vibe that I was getting from him. Which is an interesting perspective, because I don't know that I would necessarily have that same opinion. I would feel like my allegiance is more towards my family and less towards my country. I don't know if you would feel the same way, but
oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely feel called to be with my family. I am actively pruning things out of my life for the next couple of months as I get ready for, God willing, the birth of my son. And, I just know that my wife needs help and I want to be around here more. And I do see a lot of people who just choose to continue living like a singles lifestyle. Like, I want to go out, I want to drink, I want to do these things. And, and I'm not saying those things are wrong. Please don't say that I'm calling people out who go out and have a drink and go to the bar and stuff. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that when you are consistently choosing that over doing things for your family, and not just above and beyond things, but basic things hey, we haven't really talked this week, and I think I'd rather go to the bar than see your face.
Right.
That's the point where we're yeah, you need to kind of readjust your values. And that's what I'm thinking, at least. Right. You're entitled to your own values, but we're trying to work with you a little bit.
Right. Well, I mean, there
value your family.
Yes.
And value the relationship of your spouse and treat it like gold. Do that.
Yeah. So I don't think Adamant's gonna get Husband of the Year award for this in this book, but there is that passage. As you were talking, I thought of this. There was that passage in Scripture. It says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So a lot of people, I think I've mentioned this before, probably in another podcast, but I think most people think it's where your heart is, there your treasure will be, but it's actually the opposite. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So where you're spending your money, where you're spending your time, then your heart will go towards those things naturally, because you're obviously it's important to you because you're spending money on it. You're spending a lot of time on it. And so if your heart is in being somewhere else rather than your family, you're, by just that action alone, is saying that you value those things more than being with your family, or whatever else it could be, maybe your faith or your job or something like that. So
it's very easy to identify your idols. If you're spending lots and lots of money on one particular thing, or if you are spending lots and lots of time on one particular thing. I like that. I like that Bible passage as well. I definitely think about that. And because of that, I will encourage people to, if you haven't, check out Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University.
Right.
My wife and I, we need to make a budget. We need to get on it fast. We had the good fortune to have some pay increases. We finally got professional jobs that were no longer year to year things. And so we've had more money than we're used to. And now things have come back to reality, and the extra money is gone. And now we need to buckle down and put our money where we think God wants us to put our money, and not just be drawn by oh, I'm feeling lazy tonight. Let's order food that will, we won't have to cook and stuff. So we want to honor God by taking the things that he has provided to us, and then choosing what to do with it, versus being reactionary and just oh, I'll spend money on this, I'll spend money on that. We need to be more intentional about our spending. When we talked about that over winter break, we're still working on it though.
Right. Yeah, that's all. That kind of stuff is definitely a work in progress for us as well. And I feel like you never feel like you always do it 100% right. You're always we could have done better this month, or I went and bought that thing and I didn't really need to buy it. And there's always stuff like that but you can just work on it over time and try to get better. So, but yes, back to our story in Adam. And so he tells Faye that Joseph is dead, and she's obviously very, very sad about that. But now she's you have to stay home. But Adamant is well, I got to go help Ricard out with his election. And she's why would you do that? That's stupid. And then there's Sue Smith shows up at their house, and he's like, there was a bomb at Ricard Tumbler's. I don't remember the specific location of Ricard Tumbler's like headquarters or something. Like maybe it's like the Union headquarters or something. And
it's like in a warehouse district, and
right,
like
yeah.
I remember Tanya walking in and being like, "This looks like a warehouse," but it's like
right,
insanely opulent on the inside and like
right,
just to the nines.
right. I was trying to look on. Oh, number 16. If you look on the map at the beginning of the book, number 16, which is in the factory district, way kind of on the outskirts of town, is the Union headquarters. So there you go. We found it. Thank you, Brian McClellan, for maps. Maps are helpful.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a bomb of Ricard on the Union headquarters, and so Adamant goes there because he was going to go help Ricard Tumbler with his election anyway, so he goes to kind of figure out what was happening. And I guess there was this massive bomb where they were having a party there, and some people were killed, and Ricard feels really bad about it, obviously. And so now Adamant is going to try and investigate what is happening with this. And then for kind of the last few scenes, we have Adamant, who is going to be meeting with Lord Claremont, who we haven't seen in quite a while. So it's kind of good to see him again. Gabe, do you want to talk about this last section of the book here?
Sure. So Lord Claremont, the only time we get words from him are at the end of book 2 when he arrives in Adapest and kind of declares himself like savior of the city. But we also know that Claremont is the employer of Vetus, and we know how ruthless and cutthroat Vetus was, how utterly without morals or sympathy or empathy for anybody he acted. So you kind of like transpose those character qualities to Claremont. So you know that this is a ruthless man, and at one point, so Adamant is going to talk to him about the bombing, and so he's like trying to figure out, did Claremont bomb him? And Adamant is accompanied by a few people. I forget exactly.
There's like a police officer that's like, so like someone from the city who's investigating, I think, who's with him. And then he was with Sue Smith, but Sue Smith was like, "I'm gonna wait outside," and Adam was like, "Okay." That was basically what happened with that one.
Mm-hmm. So we meet Claremont, and he's basically saying like, "I'm not your man," and and at one point he's like, "If I wanted Ricard Tumbler dead, he'd be dead."
Very matter of fact.
Yep. But he's saying that he has the best chance of winning the election. He's got like this new special sponsor that's like going to help him, in the election. And at the end, we learn that this is all true because there's a knack in the room, a knacked person, and they are able to detect lies. They can hear lies. And so everything that Claremont says is true. And then Adamant is kind of like pulled aside by Claremont, and they talk privately, and Claremont's just like, "Hey, remember that time I captured your family and tortured your son? And like, let's just leave the past in the past." And Adamant says, "I'll see you dead." So he just very clearly delivers his threat. Like, "You're going to die and I want you dead." And then we have the tail end of this last chapter. We end on this little like zinger by Adamant. He's going into Claremont's office, and there's this big bright morning light behind Claremont, and he's sitting at his desk. And Adamant just gets this weird feeling about the room, and he's just like, he can't put his finger on it. And then he's like trying to think about it. He's like, why am I so thrown off by this room? and he realizes at the end of this chapter
that Claremont casts no shadow. Bum, bum, bum.
Oh boy. What does it mean, everybody?
Ooh, what does it mean?
Leave your thoughts in the comments. Yeah, I don't know what it means.
We know one thing.
Okay, what do we know?
Something supernatural is going on.
All right. That's a good...
That's the only thing that we really know from that statement, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about thinking of all of the stuff that's happened with the magic system in this book series. I was trying to think of like what could be the thing that is doing that to him, or what is like somebody possessing him. Is there like some kind of, is he like a god incarnate or something like that, or is his sponsor somebody super magical and powerful who's doing some stuff in the background? Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure of where this is going to go. So it'll be interesting for this last half
This
of the
is
book.
one of the things I do remember.
Okay, so this was important enough that Gabe remembered it, so that's good.
Yeah. And I also know one other big thing that's going to happen. And then trying to remember all the other details. But I know those two main things stuck with me even through the years. I remember them, so...
Very good. Well, that's where we leave our heroes here at the end of this first half of the book. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what's going to happen at the wrap up. I enjoyed kind of getting the reunion of Tamis and Taniel, because they've been away from each other for basically a whole book. And so getting them back together has been really nice. And I think there's still some tension there between them. So, I was thinking about like what might happen in this last half of the book and this last part of the series, and I have a feeling that Tamis is one of those characters that's going to have to die. So I don't know if that's going to be something that happens. I'm going to try and read Gabe's face as I say this to see if it's true. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's going to have to be like I feel like a major character should die. I don't really like it when stories end and like everyone survives and they live happily ever after. Wow, that's so nice. But I feel like this story is dark enough, at least Powder Mage in general, and Brian McClellan writes it, like it's a dark enough story that I feel like some characters should be dying at the end, or maybe Adamant has to die so he has one last act to save his family, and that really shows his true colors, that he's a family man, or I don't know, something like that, where somebody needs to have some kind of last stand, or maybe Vlora will die for Taniel to show her true love for him and that she was really sorry for what she did, because they kind of still have a little beef about what happened with Vlora sleeping with the other man, and yeah, so there's some stuff that I feel like could happen and could be interesting. I see Gabe having some little smirks there, so
one of your predictions is true.
Okay, one of them is true, so we get that confirmation. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing...
You said 3 of them. I will not say which one.
Right, yeah. So, well, at least I'm on the right track for some of the storylines.
You are.
So, yeah,
my brain doesn't think that way. Like I when I'm in a story, I'm not usually like making predictions like that. I think that doing this podcast has kind of changed that about me, but like normally I'm just like, oh, what's going to happen next?
Right.
And I don't think like that larger picture like that, except in movies, dude. Movies, like someone will say a line, and just because I know playwrights and people who write script, like everything has significance. And like, you know, in a book, you don't have to have that sort of approach, because you can just go on for pages and pages about like what was at the dinner table, and people will keep reading it because they like the story.
Wheel of Time.
Yeah, I was actually thinking Game of Thrones.
Okay, right.
But yeah, same thing. Sorry, that was all I was to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just kind of like thinking of those on the fly. Whenever I'm reading, I'm not like actively like, oh, I think now that this thing happened, that maybe this thing will happen over here later on in the story. Like every so often, I'll read something, I'll be like, ooh, that's interesting, and I think this thing will happen because of that. So if something is like interesting enough to me, that will just kind of pop into my head. But yeah, I don't really try to do predictions too much because I like to kind of be. I'm kind of like you. Like I like to kind of see where the story goes and kind of be surprised of what will happen. I don't really try to do a lot of predictions, but yeah, definitely with the podcast, I do try to think about like what would happen based on the things that have already happened in the story, and for previous books as well, how will all of these kind of things wrap up and tie together and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you guys have predictions for the last half of the book, let us know. It'll be interesting for sure to see the very end of the story. Yeah, I think at the end here I have a section on some major themes. We kind of talked about a little bit of these as we just kind of went through the story, but one of the big themes that I noticed throughout this book, this first half of the book, is just family and friendship. And there's a few relationships. There's Tamis and Taniel, like the father-son relationship. There's Bo and Taniel, which is like a really good friendship kind of thing. And then we have Adamant and Faye, which we already kind of really talked about, with him not really focusing on his family and her kind of wanting him to be more present, and him being drawn more towards his love of country and patriotism and less towards his family, which is interesting because like he really does love his family, but I feel like maybe he has a mindset where he's like, if there's no country to live in, then the family life is irrelevant or something like that. Maybe he's trying to taking like a higher level approach to it, or I'm not sure, but we'll have to see. But the Bo and Tanya relationship has been interesting as well, because there's a section of the book where Bo's like, he's my only friend. He's literally my only friend, and he will do basically anything for Taniel to get him back. And so like he's on a mission to go back and get Taniel, and Tamis is also on a mission. Like, he's my only son. He is my boy. I'm going to get him back, and I'm going to ignore everything else, the war, all the other generals are going to be mad at me, whatever. I'm going to ignore all those things, and we're going to go back and get Taniel. So we have Bo and Tamis both going to like the ends of the earth to get him back because they love him. So yeah, looks like you were going to say something there, so I'll let you jump in.
No, I was just looking through the scripture that you chose. Do you want to share those with us?
Sure, yeah. So I have two passages from Colossians 3. So the first one is verses 12 through 13, which say, put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And I put this under the Tamis and Taniel relationship because I feel like there's some animosity between them, and I feel like they both need to forgive each other for things that have been done in the past. Like Taniel has kind of been like kind of skirting command, and he kind of just does whatever he wants, and he doesn't really respect authority, and Tamis doesn't really like that about him. But Tamis, on the same wavelength, is not really the great father, and he's demanding, and he's hard, and he doesn't really show his love very well towards Taniel. And Taniel maybe thinks that like he only wants Taniel to just do the war things and be a killer, and he doesn't really want him for family reasons and just because he's his son. Like he loves him because of what he can do on the battlefield, not because he's his son. And so I think there's some strife there between them. And I think, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, like that was the phrase that I thought about for this relationship, because they both need to do some mutual forgiving for the relationship to be completely mended. So that's what I have for that particular passage. And then the next one is just verses 20 and 21, also in Colossians 3, which is just, children, obey your parents and everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children lest they become discouraged. And this is like basically the exact dynamic that Tamis and Taniel have. Taniel doesn't always obey Tamis and what he asks him to do, but Tamis is constantly provoking Taniel. And so because of that, I think Taniel does become discouraged in terms of his like self-identity and self-worth. So those are my thoughts. What do you think?
I think
about
the
that?
ultimate like provocation that
Right.
Tamis does is in book 1 where he tells him to go kill his best friend.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's like the epitome of like provoking a child. Yeah, I need you to go kill your best friend. Sorry, that's just like, that is bad parenting. Please don't do that.
Yeah, because I remember in that scene, actually, now that you mention it, because he says, Taniel's like, I'm not going to do that unless you order me to do it, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has to order him to do it from a command perspective, not because, like, Taniel wouldn't just do it because Tamis asked. Like, if Tamis just asked him because he's his father, he wasn't going to do that. But because he's his commanding officer, now he has to do it because he'll get, he could get thrown out of the army. So, yeah. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Now, did you have any other thoughts on those passages or just some of the other relationships that I mentioned there?
Just the forgiveness part is always good. It is, remember, forgiveness is a gift to yourself. Don't let people who have upset you, don't let them win more by not forgiving them. And remember that just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you have to trust them in that capacity again. Like if someone has hurt you or betrayed you, like it is possible to forgive them and then never give them like the opportunity to do it again. Like that is totally within your boundaries.
Yes.
I mean, but it does get difficult when it comes down to like family relationships and like you are a kid inside of a household. Like you don't have control over that situation. But if you are an adult and you are living on your own and living your own lifestyle, you definitely can set boundaries against people who have hurt you in the past. But always forgive them. Don't let people who have hurt you like continue to hurt you because you're only hurting yourself. You're the only one going through that struggle. Don't make it harder for yourself. Just forgive them, move on, and you don't have to trust them in those situations again.
Yeah, that's a good word. Cool. The last thing, we already kind of talked about this with Nyla a little bit, as we mentioned, just like her struggle with dealing with the power that she has, and she's using her power to do evil things to save the people that she loves. So like, where is the kind of the ethical and the moral line in that situation? We already kind of talked about that, so I will leave that. You can go back later in the podcast and re-listen to that section if you so desire. So that's going to do it. Any last thoughts on this section, this half of the book?
I want to remember the end of this book. Two important things that I remember, and I don't know the rest, so I forget how like things play out with all of our different characters. So I'm just looking forward to rereading the end of this book and remembering the finer details, because I've decided, like when we do the podcast, like it is a different level because we're going into like analysis, right? And there's a difference between like just watching something versus like analyzing it, because when you analyze something and it's something that's good, you usually go into the realm of like appreciation. Because you can see the bigger story. Like, going into the Wheel of Time books, for the podcast has made me like before I definitely had like a working memory of like, this is what happened in like the previous 5 chapters. And like, I remember these parts of the book, but like, I don't have an appreciation for the full narrative of the Wheel of Time. But now that we're doing it on the podcast, like I do. So yeah. I think I'm appreciating the books more. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing the culmination of this trilogy one more time. And yeah, it'll be good. How about you? Any predictions? You want to talk? You already gave me 3, and I told you one of them was true.
Yeah, I don't. I can't think of any anything else off the top of my head. I hope we get more magic system reveals and just seeing, what's going on with that. Also, the Kresimir Kapol kind of showdown will be interesting. And I just don't know if it's going to end with like Kresimir dying. Because we kind of got, like in book 2, we kind of got a little bit of a glimpse with Mahali talking about like the relationship between the different gods and how they have different, like, they're kind of like human gods because they're like super powerful, but they kind of came to Earth in a way. And so, I don't know, just maybe seeing more of that kind of stuff happening. I like to see like very high level world building and magic system discussion. So anytime I can get those things in a fantasy book, I will be paying attention, because I like to kind of learn the intricacies of those things and how all of those things affect the world. So that's what I'll be looking forward to, on top of my other various predictions that I had said earlier.
I was just thinking back through the things that you said. You actually made 2 correct predictions.
Oh my gosh! Now
look at you.
Whenever I re-listen to when I'm editing, I'm gonna have to think about which ones they are.
Yep, you should do that.
All right, cool. Well, I'm glad I'm on the right track for predictions. So that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's gonna do it. I got nothing else. The next episode is obviously going to be the finale of the Powder Mage Trilogy and the end of the Autumn Republic. And it's going to be a great ending to the series, and I'm excited that you guys are joining us. As always, you can check out more Pages of Light content at pagesoflight.com, and you can also follow us on all of the various social media platforms, and go over to the YouTube as well and subscribe so you can check out the video version and some of the other videos that I have put up on the channel as well. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can also leave us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And I've also started, I think I'm going to start, if I haven't already, with Vinland Saga, making Spotify also have the video version of the podcast as well, because Spotify supports video podcasts. So I think you can also check out the video version on Spotify if you so desire. So something else you can do. That is going to do it. Thank you very much for watching or listening. As always, remember to keep reading and to share the gospel with somebody this week. And we will see you guys in the next episode. See you later.
Bye.